Hello, this is Alexander Siddig, and you're listening to Kneel Before Pod, and don't tune out.
Kneel Before Blog presents Kneel Before Pod.
And welcome to a special bonus edition of Kneel Before Pod. As an addendum to our recent Supergirl podcast, we decided to split off our discussion of the recently announced Snyder Cut into its own mini-episode. I'm your host Craig, and I'm joined by Chris and Andrew to pour over the revelation. Okay, so recently Zack Snyder announced during a watch-along of Man of Steel, where Henry Cavill was in attendance as well, sitting on his arse watching films while still being like the biggest man alive in terms of muscles. Just looking at that guy just makes me feel horrible about myself. It's ridiculous. Come on, Henry Cavill. Are you actually just Superman? And there's no special effects on display at all. So we're getting this, or we're getting something like it. We won't be actually getting the Snyder Cut because when Zack Snyder said it never existed, that's true, because he had a work print, a sort of assembly cut, if you will, that was unfinished, that has been sort of tampered with, edited out, stored away, and now they're just restoring some of that while spending 20 to 30 million finishing the film. So it's a bit like the Donner cut in that sense, as in it doesn't really exist, but we're going to sort of duct tape it together anyway. So what do we think of this? Andrew, what's your thoughts on the fact that we're actually getting this?
Well, I've got mixed feelings about it, to be honest. I certainly like the idea of a director being given the opportunity to realise the original vision for his creative work, which became indelibly tampered with after it left his control. But also, I think it sets a dangerous precedent for the effectiveness of basically people making a lot of noise on the internet, demanding things from people. And it will henceforth be decided that if people make enough noise about something, then fans will be able to get whatever they want.
Yeah, and people think that, although that's not actually what's happening here. It's just this strange coincidence, this confluence of events where you have this thing that you can put together on the cheap. You've got a new streaming service that isn't going to have any content for a while because you can't release anything because the world is in lockdown, practically. And that's it, really. I mean, it's going to be relatively cheap to put together, so they can do it, but it wouldn't be happening otherwise. And it's not because a lot of, well, some terrible people made noise on the internet. They shouldn't think that they've won in that sense, although they have won in a very real sense.
Yeah, I think it's interesting as a curiosity piece of seeing what the original vision was. I mean, part of me is just glad that it's hopefully going to get this debate over and done with.
No, it's just beginning. It really is.
It's one of those ones, it's like, it's going to get released, and then they're going to go, oh, but that's not what he originally wanted. It's like, what if it's just 2 times as disappointing, you know? The cut that you thought was going to save this film for you, which you were disappointed in, it turns out is just as bad. Just now it's got lots of camera angles where you can't see people's lips moving so that they can overdub voices.
Yeah.
I mean, out of curiosity, yes, I want to see it. Is it necessary? No. And do you want those people to feel like, oh, well, we've won and we can do what we want now? No. Definitely don't want that either. So, I don't know. It's one of those ones that I don't quite get. And part of me wants to argue for small films and small productions where, was it £20 million, you said?
20 to 30 million, but someone at Warner Brothers says, I wish this was all it was costing.
Yeah. So you're sitting there and you're thinking, okay, so you're putting all of this money into doing an adjusted edit of a film which we have already seen. How many small productions could they put a little bit of that money into and get a couple of cracking films out of?
Well, you could literally make 30 films out of that money.
Oh, yeah. There's like small productions, small pilots of things that might be interesting for your streaming service in the future. All these little things. You could throw out a big net and catch a couple of absolute gems. Yeah, you'd probably end up with 28 duds and 2 amazing bits of content out of it. But you could still do that. And instead, we're going to get to see a slightly adjusted version of a film that we've already seen.
Yeah. Well, I can't remember who it was. It was on Michael Rosenbaum's podcast. I'll put it in the show notes because I can't remember exactly who said it. But someone said that for the amount of money that you spend on a blockbuster of this scale, you can make however many films. And out of those films, so many of them will be great, so many of them will be terrible, and most of them will be somewhere in between. So your hit rate, if you spend that much money on more films, will be higher, actually, than it would be on this one film. Plus, it already is one of the most expensive films ever made. Whatever camp you want to fall into, whatever ledger the budget's reported on, and including the marketing budget and so on. I mean, if you think about it, Justice League, the released version, looks terrible in a lot of scenes. The CGI is not finished. The upper lip stuff is dreadful. All that stuff. It's just, it's a mess. It's a visual mess. And to think about the fact that it probably cost more than half of, maybe not as much as half of sort of Infinity War / Endgame, but you're getting towards that kind of money. And it looks dreadful in places because it is so rushed. But the thing is, it also isn't the Snyder cut. It isn't the original cut that would have been released because he's had a couple of years to think about it, to think about refining the edit, to think about additional dialogue, to think about all these things. So the original version that was ever going to be released, if it would ever have been released, is just never going to exist because it can't. Because hindsight is now involved.
You're absolutely right. And also the temptation, or I know my temptation would be, well, let me have a look at what people said about the original. Let me run down this list here. Oh, actually, I was going to include that scene. All right, I'll take that one out. Oh, that line of dialogue. Oh, yeah, that was in my original as well. I'll take that bit out as well. you know. Oh, what did they ask for? Oh, they wanted a scene like that. Can add that one in. It's like, you wouldn't have that opportunity otherwise. But all this time to, like you say, to think about it and to do a bit more research or do a bit more thought into it. So, yeah, we'll see. We'll see. But am I going to watch it? Yeah, likely. I always convince myself, no, I'm not going to watch this kind of thing. But yeah, I totally will, out of curiosity more than anything else.
Oh, and we'll podcast about it as well. I mean, obviously.
No doubt, no doubt. The other bit that's confusing me is that they're saying, oh, we're going to split it into sort of 4 pieces, 6 pieces or whatever. Yeah. Let's spread it out as much as possible on this platform. It's like, okay, we get it. You've got a streaming platform. So what are you going to do? Release it monthly to try and get people to hang about?
Well, if you do, you get 6 months out of people.
Exactly.
Or
6 months of subscription.
6 months.
Yeah. 6 months subscription out of it so that you can see the film that you've already seen slightly adjusted. I don't know. It just seems a bit of a grab. Like you said earlier on, it reeks of a streaming platform with no content, having to quickly grab something because everyone else has managed to keep a bit of content alive in this time and they're just starting out, so need something desperately.
Yeah, and I think the whole multi-part release thing, it's also down to Snyder himself actually estimating that the release movie only used about a quarter of the material that he shot for in the first place.
Yeah.
He can't be certain because he's never actually watched it, but this is just him estimating from what other people have told him.
Yeah.
And so, as a result, some mathematics going off, reckon that they can make some kind of 6-hour epic out of it.
Yeah, I mean, the Richard Donner cut, it's the one I keep coming back to when I think about this because it's the only time that something like this... I mean, there has been different cuts of different films, obviously, released over the years. Like Blade Runner, there's 40 of them.
At least.
There's 6, but I'm going to say 40 because it's more dramatic. But the Donner cut, that was made with this isn't going to be what I was ever going to release. It's just kind of as much as I can cobble together. There's a key scene that is just literally test footage. They're camera tests that Christopher Reeve and Margot Kidder did. So they walk into a room and then their hair changes completely, their clothes change completely, and Christopher Reeve's wearing different glasses and stuff. But you get the sense of what the scene was supposed to be about, which is enough, because you know that you're not watching a finished article. But yeah, the amount of polish they're going to put on to be like, no, this is a thing. This is a thing that you should be watching, and we've paid proper attention to it and things like that. So it'll be interesting to see how it shapes out. But I'm concerned about the other movements it's sparking up. So we're going to get this Game of Thrones crap back. And redo Game of Thrones season, whatever it is. And we're also going to get remake The Last Jedi, even though Rise of Skywalker's already out and Carrie Fisher's like dead now, so can't reshoot anything for the Last Jedi. But it's cool because you could do it with CGI, even though we said we hated the CGI Leia, but we won't in this case because it will be the real version of the film. That's what you're going to get. We're already getting the... Can we have a 4-hour cut or 3-hour cut of Revenge of the Sith? No. Why would you want that? Why would you want another 2 hours of that?
And there's also people demanding the Ayer cut of Suicide Squad.
Including David Ayer. Yeah. I'll read you his tweet because I love this tweet. This trailer nailed the tone and intention of the film I made. I don't think he even shared the link to the trailer. Oh no, he did. Methodical, layered, complex, beautiful and sad. After the BVS reviews shell-shocked the leadership at the time and the success of Deadpool, my soulful drama was beaten into a comedy. I don't believe a word of this, other than the fact that the leadership changed it. But I don't think David Ayer has ever made anything that's layered or complex.
Yeah, well, he's certainly made some stuff that he thinks is, evidently, but just isn't.
Yeah, in Bright, someone says, remember the Alamo.
Oh, God.
What's the Alamo in this universe?
I despise that film so much.
It's so bad. Do I want to see the Ayer cut of Suicide Squad as a curiosity? Maybe, actually. But do I really want to see it? No, not really, because it'll have more Jared Leto Joker in it. We don't need that.
Mm-hmm.
Will this happen? Apparently all the footage exists and can just be cut together, so maybe if it's on the cheap, they'll do it. But what does this start looking like for the DC Universe as well? It's like, we have this Splinter universe that you can watch.
Yeah, we've got alternate versions of all our films where... I mean, it's one of those things, if they get the success with the Snyder Cut, maybe they will. Maybe they will go, do you know what? We'll throw some more millions that way and do another
We'll make
edit.
Justice League 2 and 3, even though,
Yeah, we're now going to do this little splintering off kind of thing. I don't know. It's interesting because there's even been talk of Henry Cavill returning to film some DC stuff. So it's very weird what's going on at the moment. But
yeah, well, Henry Cavill back as Superman is fine in my book as far as I'm concerned.
I think he deserves getting a fairer shot at doing it. I think it does. I mean, they've been talking about trying to do individual films for the characters rather than trying to focus on doing this grand universe building, smashing everyone together, whether it fits or not. Mentality. So hopefully they're still sticking with that and not trying to go back down that path again.
Yeah.
You know, it's like we've already seen you try that. It didn't really work out, so stick to what you've been doing. When you work it out, put it all together again.
Basically, they're going to do exactly what they should have done in the first place, and everybody at the time was saying, this is what you should be doing instead of this. This is what you should be doing before this, because exactly this is going to happen.
Yeah, but Marvel have 2 Avengers movies out with another on the way.
Yeah, you know what? They also had movies with each other's characters in them, so audiences actually knew and cared who they were going in. Yeah,
the thing is, this movement has always confused me a little bit because when you think back to the reaction to Batman v Superman, right? There's people that like it. I like parts of it. It's a slog, but I quite like it in part. But so many people didn't. There was a very loud movement of people who were saying, no, this is not what I want my DC universe to look like. Change this at once. And then they did, and you got Justice League as it is now. And then suddenly that comes out, and people are saying, release the original cut of Justice League. We don't want this crap. So what's probably going to happen here is it will come out, people will be like, this is a bit too much like Batman v Superman. This isn't what I wanted at all. So, but this is what you were going to get.
Yeah, well, if it's not what you wanted, then maybe you should have asked for it.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe you shouldn't have complained, and then it would have just came out the way it... Yeah, God.
Part of me that's like, oh, I hope this finishes it off. And then at the same time, you're like, it's never going to finish because they're going to go, no, this isn't what I wanted either. Let's get another version done.
God.
You know,
it's never going to end.
Yeah, let's reboot it all. Let's reboot it all from the start.
Yeah. The thing about director's cuts in general, though, I mean, well, there's a distinction between director's cut and extended cut. Extended cut is when they slap a few extra deleted scenes onto the Blu-ray release to encourage you to buy it. Or like the unrated edition, where it's, yeah, this isn't the version that we had rated by the BBFC or whatever governing body it is in the US.
Which is amounts to, in crappy sex comedies, there being a couple more scenes with boobs in them.
Yeah, or there's a slightly different angle on one of the scenes or something like that. It's not exactly the same version they had rated, so therefore it's unrated. Or you do have like the director's cut, and that's something that Zack Snyder's done before. Sucker Punch, that's the director's cut, isn't it? that was released?
I can't actually remember.
Yeah. The Ultimate Edition of Batman v Superman is the version he wanted, I think.
Which I still not actually watched yet.
All right, okay.
It was mainly down to one of my issues with Batman v Superman was the length of it. and with it being an issue for me, is like, okay, so how is it being half an hour longer going to improve my impressions of it?
Yeah, and you've just hit the nail on the head in terms of the point I'm driving at here. The thing is, if you're going to watch an extended cut of something, you have to be interested in the theatrical cut in the first place. Like, I'm not going to visit an extended cut of something I hated to see if it's any better.
An extended cut or a director's cut is normally a reward for something going down really, really well, where people are screaming out for, give me more of this. Let me have more insight into this. Not, oh, well, that didn't go down very well. I tell you what, let's make it longer and try and fill out some of the plot. It's no.
The weirdest one is Kingdom of Heaven. It's actually astonishing how different the two versions are.
I watched that movie once when it first came out. I can barely remember it.
Yeah, I saw the theatrical cut when it came out, and I ended up seeing the extended edition later. I didn't really choose to. I just kind of stumbled onto it, and it was fine. Well, it wasn't fine. It's way better. It's a much better film. Like, people say that, and I didn't believe it at first, but it is. It's completely different. It's very, very strange, but it's really good. I remember the theatrical cut in the cinema, and I was like, nah. But yeah, they released the extended cut of Green Lantern, for example, on Blu-ray, hoping that it would encourage people to watch it. It's like, no, everybody hated it in the first place. No one wants to watch a longer version of this, unless it fixes everything, which, by the way, it doesn't. So that's a weird one. But yeah, we're getting this. There'll be some news on it, I guess, trickling down soonish, and it'll be interesting. We'll probably do a podcast on it, and yeah, see how it turns out. I think I'd rather it was released in one big 4-hour chunk. Just, I'm all in. Just let me sit and dissolve this, you know.
I can't see it breaking down into episodes well, but maybe it will. I don't know. It just seems odd to me.
Yeah, well, it would just have to cut off sort of mid-sentence to just fit the running time of however many episodes they want to release. So, yeah. Unless you're going to re-edit it so it has cliffhangers, which means it's even less of the thing that they wanted.
Previously on Justice League.
Yeah, that's it.
It's like, well, this is how I intended it, folk. Really?
Last week, Batman was really upset and almost beat someone to death. Do you want to see more of this? No. I'm good, thanks. Superman hasn't shown up yet, if you're interested in that. He'll show up somewhere in episode 5 of 6, you know?
And in this episode, the Amazons exchange their leather bikinis for practical armour. And there's a huge outcry against PC gone mad.
And that action sequence involving the Amazons looks a little bit less like that Windows XP background.
Oh my god, I've forgotten that.
Yeah. Okay, so that's it. We're getting the Snyder Cut. Anything else to say on that before we hop back to our respective other topic that you can now listen to, that Supergirl podcast, if you really want to?
Just that it's not something I was ever really that bothered about, but now that it's going to exist, I will watch it out of morbid curiosity, if nothing else, and then just to think about it and see if I am completely and utterly as indifferent to its existence as I was for the theatrical version.
Cool. What about you, Chris? Anything final?
I think I've covered it, really. Will I watch it out of curiosity? Probably. But do I feel it's necessary? No.
Yeah, I'm the same. I'll watch it because I always watch this stuff. I'll be part of the problem on this one, I think. Mm-hmm. So I'm not going to tweet about how much I want it. I don't tweet about anything, let alone how much I want stuff. So, yeah, we'll see how it shapes out. Join us back here in a few months and we'll discuss it at some point, at some length, I guess. That was our brief discussion of the release of the Snyder Cut. Thanks to YouTuber Neil Stenson for the supplied music. If you liked what you heard, then please do subscribe on iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, or any major podcasting app. iTunes users, please do leave us a star rating and a comment. If you want to discuss the Snyder Cut, DC movies in general, or anything else, then you can contact us through Facebook and Twitter under Neil Before Blog, or leave a comment on neilbeforeblog.co.uk. We hope you'll join us on the next Neil Before Pod.